Hello and welcome back, Sharkeers, to another episode of Deep Dives with Sharks. My name is Alex. I am the host here, and I cannot ride my bike with no handlebars. I just end up falling, you know? Kind of like the song Handlebars by Flowbots. We're off to a good start. So, a quick update. My caseload at work doubled in size, and I now essentially am trying to help about 100 patients across an area that is roughly 40 miles across and 50 miles long. So, it's rather time consuming and tiring. But I'm trying to manage that on top of planning another move, keeping up with my mental health. So it might be a little bit more sporadic again with posting. I have been live on Saturdays on Twitch and YouTube playing games and talking sharky things with the Sharkiras, so feel free to tune in there for weekly content. I may do some more filler episodes in between, like movie analysis or aquarium reviews, but I want to try to keep it as shark focused as possible and not get too sidetracked doing a lot of the shark related but not actually shark things. So we'll try to limit those as much as possible. Now, I do also want to give a quick heads up to anyone that is heading to Florida for spring break or over the summer or traveling anywhere tropical. Sharks are also migrating through these waters back to the northern hemisphere, so just keep an eye out as the seasons change because they're usually moving through the water, so you might encounter some. So, once again, back to the safety side, just keep your head on a swivel, just make sure you know what you're jumping into, ideally not a school of fish, and you should be fine. Now, I do want to try something just a little bit different. Don't worry, we will in fact get to the sharks, but I myself have felt rather stressed recently. Been working, podcasting, spending time with friends and family, and a lot of current events going on. I could use a little break, and I feel like everyone could as well. So get ready for some guided meditation, you stressed dorks. Now, I'm going to take a second here to switch into calm Alex voice. And what I want you to do is we're just going to start by taking a deep breath. Just breathe in and then breathe out. Just let the air fill your lungs slowly and then exhale. You want to try pausing on the breathe in just to let your mind clear and then breathe out. Feels nice, right? Just keep breathing in. Feel that tension leave out of your neck, out of your shoulders. Just keep breathing. Now, I want you on this next deep breath to give your legs a little stretch. You've been sitting for a while. Stretch your feet out. And breathe out. And breathe in. And then notice that your shoulders and arms are going to feel a little relaxed too. And then breathe out. And then I want you to keep doing that. But on these next few breaths, I just want you to focus on your favorite shark. Just having a swim, chasing some fish, doing a nice breach. Kind of nice. And finally, one last breathe in, and then breathe out. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit better. Appreciate you being here with me on that, sharing that moment with me. Always feels nice to breathe for a little bit. Just get through everything there. Things might get a little rocky, might seem scary, but in the end, it's going to turn out all right. So, of course, if y'all want to do more of this in the future, I'm definitely down to do that. Let me know in the comments or anywhere on social media as well. I am pretty good in the field of mental health, and it's as important as physical health as well. And I'd love to help the Sharkiers with an area that I know a decent bit about. Well, also sharks, clearly. But speaking of the sharks, we should eventually get into this episode. So to stay up to date on everything Deep Dives with Sharks, hit the follow button on Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Amazon Music, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along at Deep Dives with Sharks on any of those. Feel free to ask any questions, share any comments, or any shark-related content on the social medias and in the comments. Now, I know that I just said we're going to get to the sharks, but a while ago I did ask you guys for some of your favorite shark facts and jokes, and I did get a couple of them, so we're going to go over those. Now, a really cool shark fact that was shared by a shark themselves, that was that sharks are considered vertebrates despite being made of cartilage because they have a vertebral column, which I did know that they were vertebrates, but I'd never considered the fact that they don't actually have vertebra, which is rather crazy. Isn't that vertebrae? I don't even know how I'm supposed to pronounce that. I'm not very good at science if we can't tell. But I did get some great jokes from Francis, which they were too good not to share. So the first one, of course, is what do sharks and computers have in common? It's megabytes, because like data and like biting. I'm expressing this for the younger shark hearers. Don't judge me. And of course, the other one that we have is unfortunately that a shark went to court. We're not quite sure for what, though. But the judge asked him what his plea was, and he replied he was not guilty. That's fun. I like that one. I don't care what y'all say. That's pretty great. I do love that. So feel free to send more that way. But finally, without further ado, we are actually going to get into the shark for this episode. I think that was probably one of the longest intros I've done. But anyway, so to get started, we're going to be going over the gray reef shark today. Now, there are 5 species of reef sharks, and those include the blacktip reef, gray reef, whitetip reef, Caribbean reef, and the Galapagos shark. The Galapagos is a little bit different. It does not have the reef name. The largest of the reef sharks are the Galapagos shark and the Caribbean reef shark, both coming in at an average length of 3 meters or 9.8 feet. The smallest are the whitetip and blacktip reef sharks, coming in at 1.6 meters or 5.5 feet. So I decided, since everyone else is buddied up, we're just going to go with the gray reef shark, because sometimes when people say reef sharks in general, they're usually thinking about this one. Now, I would like to quickly apologize to the sharkeer that requested all of the reef sharks, but I want to make sure I do these sharks well, and if I try to put 5 in an episode, or even the remaining 3, I know I'm going to end up missing a lot, crossing up information, or squishing it all together in a jumbled mess, and I wrote this paragraph like weeks ago, and could you imagine how bad this would be if I tried squishing everything into the one shark that I did this time? So yeah, the good news is, though, that does mean we do have 2 other reef shark episodes. We can do the Galapagos shark and the white-tip reef shark in the future. I've already done the black-tip reef shark in episode 34 and the Caribbean reef shark in episode 15. So if you want to learn more about them, you can always check them out over that way. Now, gray reef sharks grow to be about 1.88 meters or 6.2 feet long, which is just bigger than the blacktip and whitetip reef sharks. They were first discovered in 1856 by Peter Bleecker, who was a Dutch ichthyologist, which I just learned ichthyology is the branch of zoology that studies fish, which I would be honored if anyone ever mistakenly called me an ichthyologist, as I do not consider myself one since I simply look up sharks online and watch them on TV. I don't really conduct studies or look into them much further, but I do like seeing them, so I feel like I'm disqualified though, but it works. I'll go with fanatic. Now, these sharks are known by a few other names around the world, including the black V whaler, the graceful shark, Fowler's whaler shark, graceful whaler shark, gray whaler shark, school shark, long-nosed blacktail shark, and the short-nosed blacktail shark, which some of those are rather contradictory. I don't know how you're both long-nosed and short-nosed. Very confusing there. And also some are just mean, because if someone calls me long-nosed, I'm going to be upset. But the gray reef shark is a rather normal-looking shark, which makes it hard to describe, since usually I focus on what's different about them, so I'll kind of do my best here. They do have a longer face with a blunt nose that sticks out further than their lower jaw, and they have big eyes that sit above their mouth. Their gills are further back, and they have 5 gill slits, similar to many other sharks. They are gray on top and white on their bellies, with a clear line in between the two. They have a tall dorsal fin, somewhat sickle-shaped pectoral fins, and they also have caudal and anal fins. Now, their tail is slightly longer on top than on the bottom, as similar with many reef sharks as well, and their fins also sometimes have white or black tips on them, but often will be gray. Now, this differentiates between the white tip and the black tip because all of their tips tend to be the same color. Gray kind of gets a little bit of all of them if it wants to. It's not a phase, it just does what it wants. Now, these sharks can be found all over the world, and this is one of the longest lists I have seen, which is not uncommon of other reef sharks as well. I'm also going to apologize in advance if I completely butcher a pronunciation, as I did try to go through and get the pronunciations right beforehand, and I guarantee I'll still have some wrong. But they can be found in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, including around South Africa, Madagascar, India, the Red Sea, Maldives, southern China, New Zealand, Australia, the Philippines, Gulf of Thailand, Indonesia, the Chagos Archipelago, American Samoa, Easter Islands, the Cook Islands, Christmas Island, the Marquesas Islands, Guam, the Tuamotu Archipelago, I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, I've tried very hard, Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, Nauru, Micronesia, New Caledonia, the Marinas Islands, Pulau, Samoa, the Pitcairn Islands, I think I messed that one up too, the Solomon Islands, the Hawaiian Islands, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. I'm not going to lie, I cannot pronounce most of them or point to them on a map. Mostly the Hawaiian Islands, clearly. That's a joke. The American education system likes to teach us about us, and not much else, evidently, because I'd be able to pronounce them otherwise. But, it's fine, whatever. But these sharks like staying in shallower waters, typically about 200 feet, 60 meters or less, but they do go real deep, as far as going 3,300 feet or 1,000 meters, which is rather crazy deep. Now, these sharks will be found around reefs, of course, but they enjoy resting facing leeward, which means they face away from the direction of the current, or at least being on that side of the reef. They have been found in the open ocean, though, because they too want to see some whale sharks. They just look so cool. Now, I would like to point out that there is no evidence that the gray reef shark actually goes out to look at whale sharks, but I can dream. Now, the gray reef shark is kind of a jerk. As being slightly larger than other sharks, they will force other sharks out of their preferred locations. Some sharks will work together and live together, and that sounds like they are making a shark city or something. But what I mean is that they can inhabit the same areas and will even both benefit from their hunting methods. Gray reef sharks aren't really about that. They just force everyone out of the quiet hilltop where it sings when the sun hits it just right in order to build Cuscotopia. Shout out to anyone that enjoyed that Emperor's New Groove reference. They do vibe with blacktip reef sharks, though, but only a little bit, because they will allow blacktips to inhabit the shallow flats, but they'll stay in the deeper waters, so there's still that degree of separation between the two. Now, there is one shark that stands up to these guys, and that is the mighty, all-feared, so scary you cry with a second you see him, sandbar shark. Now, that is clearly an overhyping of sandbar sharks, as many aquariums have sandbar sharks as they are about the size of a sand tiger shark, and they're not very temperamental, but they eat a similar diet to the gray reef shark, so if you're hoping to see both in the same area, it's probably not going to happen. Usually, if there's an abundance of one, the other will be elsewhere. Now, this doesn't mean that if there's one around that the other one won't be, because they might be able to in smaller numbers, but I didn't see anything that said that one way or another. On top of that, these sharks do have positive relations with some fish, such as rainbow runners. They will rub against the sharks to get parasites off their skin, which would damage the parasite instead of giving it to the shark, which is rather cool. There have been rare occasions where the gray reef shark will swim with marine mammals or pelagic fishes like sailfish. A group of gray reef sharks were once observed following a pod of dolphins, and silky sharks were also along for the fun, I guess, I'm not quite sure why, and then a silvertip was also just hanging out, which I'm guessing it was just a nice little party, or their ulterior motives, which we'll discuss in a minute. Now, there is always a bigger fish, and the bigger fish in this case would be great hammerheads and silvertip sharks because they enjoy feeding on gray reef sharks, so they were most likely waiting for any of those gray reef sharks to stray away from the group, and then they would go in for the kill. Now, gray reef sharks have a smaller diet compared to a lot of other sharks, possibly why there is competition between them and sandbar sharks. They like eating cephalopods, especially squid and octopus, and crustaceans such as crabs and lobsters. But they also will sometimes go a little bit further to get some snapper, and if there's a group of them around, they can sometimes also take down another shark. But their teeth are kind of small, but they can still do damage. It's just more of a hunting in numbers mentality. Now, this shark is viviparous, which means that they give live birth instead of laying eggs, or having them hatch internally. Their pups are about 45 to 60 centimeters, or 18 to 24 inches long, so they're still pretty big because that's 2 feet, which that's for the Americans like myself who cannot do conversions like that, because I do not know, I can't visualize how long 60 centimeters, and even though I just said it, but if I say, oh, it's 2 feet, and then someone goes, yeah, that's 60 centimeters, my brain there's a wall. I can't do it. I don't know why. Now, unlike many other sharks, these sharks are active at all times of the day, but they do have peak active hours at night. Kind of how some people work night shift, but the majority work day shift. This shark typically works night shift, but has some that work in the day shift. That's a really dumb analogy, but I mean, I think y'all got it, so that's great. They're also one of the few sharks that don't like traveling far from home, as they tend to stay within a mile or kilometer of home. Many sharks like migrating, like white sharks and makos that will travel up and down the east coast of the U.S. depending on the season. But the gray reef shark just doesn't do that. They stay pretty where they are. Now, I mentioned earlier that they don't like other sharks. They do like each other, though, so they will congregate together and exhibit various social behaviors, which is, I guess, sharkist in some type of way. but they don't include them. But I mean, shark gonna shark, I guess. But they have been seen hunting along white-tip reef sharks, so I guess they do have some diversity. But it's very odd to see this in sharks, as typically sharks prefer solidarity. They'll remain solo, and those that are social will work with a variety of sharks, or at least what I've come across so far while researching. These sharks are curious of divers and will come rather close to examine you, but they get bored if they've seen you before, so you got to give them a little razzle dazzle to get them to come back. I've seen people use water bottles that are empty to crinkle them to get them to come nearby, but I recommend you be experienced if you're going to try that. Now, there is risk when they're hunting or if you are around their food, which is why you should not spend time in a school of fish or with a group of crabs, because if a shark's hungry, they won't care if you're there or not. They're going to get that fish or crab, and even if it's a crab reef, they're not going to care. They're going to still get you. Now, unfortunately, these sharks are endangered as they are caught commercially for shark fin soup and fish meal, which are two of the dumbest things that they could be used for. Their numbers are also declining due to coral bleaching caused by global warming and climate change, which, fun fact, will come up later. But that is what I have for the gray reef shark. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out on any of the ways I mentioned before, social media, comments, anything like that. Now, the safety bit that I have for this week is kind of more focused on how to keep sharks safe. So I wanted to look at how to help a shark that you feel is not receiving proper care in captivity. And this one I got a lot of information from the AZA website, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Now, firstly, dear God, the amount of pages I found that describe zoos and aquariums as prisons that only exist to torture animals is just insane. Now, I don't believe that every animal is appropriate for captivity unless further research is done into properly keeping them. Two examples would be great white sharks and basking sharks. There have been a few examples where great whites have been kept for a few days up to a few months before they either died or were released back into the wild. But the last attempt was in 2011, I believe, and marine biologists realized they need to do a lot more research before they could capture these guys and have them in an aquarium. Basking sharks as well. They did want to do that, but then also after all the issues with the whale sharks, realized that they don't know how they're going to get them somewhere, and if they does come a case where they need to release them, how are they going to get them back out? Plus, these sharks require a lot more depth than the whale sharks do, as whale sharks tend to like to be more towards the surface, and basking sharks tend to migrate down in the water throughout the night. So it's kind of hard, but there are a lot of sharkologists, which is not currently a recognized field of marine biology, but a shark here mentioned that they wanted to become one in the comments, and I support that very much. They mentioned that it's not something that could happen currently, and it's something that they want to continue to look into to eventually do down the line, but for right now, they don't know how to do it. They're going to have to look more into it. Now, many zoos and aquariums aim to provide the best possible care for their animals within their facilities and spread awareness and promote conservation efforts for these animals. Of course, there were bad practices over the years, and there are still zoos and aquariums that do not treat animals the way that they should, so that's why we're hitting on this topic. The first step I always recommend is to look into what type of care that animal would require, same as you should with any pet. If you have questions regarding the care of an animal in an aquarium or zoo, you can always ask about it. Sometimes animals require less care. It's kind of like taking care of plants. Some need more. Cactuses don't need a whole lot. If you give a cactus too much care, it's going to be overwatered and die. Some animals do not need a lot of space, nor do they want it. Crabs, for example, do not require a lot of space or an abundance of food. They kind of make do with hiding in different areas and also kind of getting the scraps that are left over, although aquariums will also have some food for them as well. So they're not really running a marathon. A lot of them don't need a whole lot of space to run around. They just kind of need a little place to hide and they're content. It is always good to ask questions because sometimes a quick conversation makes a lot of sense. When I saw the dolphin exhibit at the Georgia Aquarium, I saw that there were a lot of columns and decorations in the tank, and I wondered why Baltimore's was essentially a giant pool. So I reached out to my friend that worked there years ago, and in a short text she said, because they're usually more in the open ocean and they don't really interact with reefs. My brain went, oh yeah, makes a lot of sense. So, speaking with keepers is a good way to see what's going on and what care they require. Now, if you know something is off and you're still sure that they're not caring for the animals properly, you can contact the AZA through their website to submit concerns. This, of course, is not the nail in the coffin that will shut down the aquarium or zoo, so you don't have to worry about submitting anything that actually isn't an issue, but also try not to be submit crazy. I'm sure they get messages from PETA and some Karens that all the time claiming abuse when none has occurred. So worst case scenario, they don't really do much about it, and Best case, you were right and they get something to change. Of course, do not harass staff, cause a scene, or try to get the crowd to join against the exhibit. You're just being a jerk at that point, and trying to start an uprising right there is not going to be helpful, really, at all. Another thing is, if you're getting all your information from this podcast, I need you to look into it more. I've said it a million times. I have a degree in social work and I do research for the podcast, but I am not the final say in anything. And I swear, if I get an email from the AZA saying, yo, too many of your listeners are submitting reports and all your info is wrong, I'm putting you all in timeout to think about what you've done. But a few things to look for would be if a shark is acting erratically, such as swimming rapidly with sharp movements, hunting tank mates, or trying to leap from the tank. Now, there is a small disclaimer with this as well, because there was a leopard shark in an aquarium, which I cannot remember which one, that would get really excited when he'd see his keepers, that he'd try to jump out of the water like a dolphin. But he wasn't being abused, because he wasn't doing that when the keepers weren't around. As soon as they'd show up, he'd be so excited to go see him that he'd jump towards them. But he just liked his keepers a lot, which was adorable. Now, if an animal has open cuts or wounds, or is missing feathers, or looks like they have some sort of disease, it's also not always the aquarium or zoo's fault. They might have rescued the animal and they're currently helping it. Plus, some animals are just accident prone and might get injured more easily. I mean, pandas are built like tanks because these goobers fall out of trees and look like they're trying to swanton bomb themselves from the top rope, but it's mostly self-inflicted. They're just kind of dumb sometimes. So the first step's always conversation, and also a lot of these animals that are healing or have been rescued are usually behind the scenes first, so you're not usually going to roll up on them and see some animal looking diseased and decrepit. But I mean, right now there's a panther at the Zoo Tampa. I believe it's Michael is his name, but he doesn't put any weight on his front right paw, I believe it is, and that's just how he's always been. That's how they got him, but they can't do anything to fix it at this point, so he's just going to be hurt, and he's okay with that. He gets around fine. He's happy. He celebrates his birthday every year. It's adorable, which I have the same birthday as one of the Panthers. I can't remember who. It might be Michael. We'll find out. I need to look at the pictures again. But anyway, that's what I have for the safety bit of this episode. We're going to go on to the news. Now, I will give you a little disclaimer first. This section is definitely getting political this time. I may get a little bit heated. I've tried to keep politics out of the podcast as much as I could, but two dumb things happened related to sharks in the past week, and I'm going to talk about them. So here we go. You've been warned. But the first news story that I have is federal shark attack alert, quote, Lulu's Law, end quote, named after Mountain Brook teen. And this was reported by 1819 News. So I want to be very clear off rip. My critiques of this bill or law are not at any victims of shark bites, and they should not be seen as the aggressor or the villain in this situation. In many cases, they are simply swimming and a shark bit them because they were looking for food, didn't know what they were, the water was murky. Who knows? There's a whole bunch of reasons why it could have happened. But I'm not here to bash any victims or anything like that, and I don't want anyone to as well. I'm also not completely familiar with Lulu's incident, other than I remember the time frame and thinking, wow, that was a lot of bites in a short period of time. But other than that, I had to look more into it. But anyway, on to the article. This teen was bitten by a shark in June of 2024, along with two others on the same day. And when I looked further into it, I remember that these bites were less than 2 hours apart, which is incredibly close together, which is also why people are trying to claim it was the same shark, despite this not being confirmed. Now, a shark can cover a lot of distance within 2 hours. I don't know why anyone would be in the same area biting people over and over again. It's not impossible, though, as there was the bull shark that swam 25 miles up the Delaware River biting people about 100 years ago. So it's possible, but the area is so big, especially here in Florida, and it's the shark bite capital of the world. There's quite a few sharks down here. It's not just one shark putting up those numbers. That'd be nuts. So I don't believe that this is the action of one shark. I feel it goes back to Jackson Hooten's density problem that he described to me as a lot of people in the water with a lot of sharks, so you're going to get a bite or two. Now, what this bill aims to do is it would allow for an emergency alert to be sent out after a bite or when shark bite conditions are present, which, let me tell you, spring break and throughout the summer, your phone's going to be blowing up about it, which shark bite conditions is just wild because they're literally, are you in a tropical area with water connected to the ocean? Congrats, there's a shark nearby. Have you gotten bit? No. Congrats, that's usually how it goes. If you did get bit, it's usually not how it goes. Sorry about that. Now, I am very much for trying to have protective measures in place. But right here, this is not like it's not going to do a whole lot. The best protective measure is providing education and giving people the tools to know what to look for. Kind of like how I have a whole safety section constantly reminding you to keep an eye out if you notice a lot of fish or wearing something shiny, or if you're trying to feed fish in the water, which you shouldn't do because all those things attract sharks. But I feel like these alerts will mostly just cause fear and panic and lead people to advocate for shark hunting. And then we've kind of just circled back to Jaws, which now we're back in the 70s, and that's like almost that actually is 50 years of science and research just completely down the drain. Those were 50 years ago. That's crazy. Anyway, another big issue that I have is that in America currently, the Republican Party has been spreading the message that they are protecting children and families, but doing things to directly hurt them while pushing for things like this that really do little to nothing. Sure, these alerts will keep some people out of the water, but others will still go in and can still get bit. There will still be sharks in the water, and that's where they live. They're being driven closer to shore due to changing conditions. If we wanted to make real change to protect people, we could push for climate change protections to allow the ocean to recover and sharks to return more offshore. Now, not every shark lives offshore, and bites have not increased from year to year, but as things continue to trend the way they are, they're going to start getting closer, which creates a bigger density problem, which is going to be a rise in shark bites. So instead of addressing the real issue, they're solving a non-issue currently while screaming, "We protected them," and the other side didn't, which is just really, really frustrating. And unfortunately, this brings me to the next article, which this one's probably going to be where I get real heated, but we'll see. So far, I'm calm. Crazy. But the Trump administration rolls back dozens of environmental regulations in landmark shift. And this is by Semaphore. Now, I'm going to apologize now because I feel like this one's going to be the one of the two stories that gets me rather angry because it is about one of the two things I support the highest, and that is LGBTQ plus rights and the environment. And this administration is actively going after both, so I'm rather angry these days, but it's fine. We're working on it. Now, the head of the EPA, which is just an oxymoron currently, is planning to roll back all Biden-era environmental protections on emissions, water, and the fossil fuel industry. Now, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard, as the goal is to drive down prices of cars and homes. But I can think of a great way to do that without touching regulations, but I'll leave that out for right now. But also real quick, Canada's not going to be the 51st state, you absolute gremlin. Anyway, in 2024, for the first time in the history of recording climate change numbers, the fail-safes that helped limit the amount of carbon left in the atmosphere failed. Coral reefs and subaquatic vegetation, along with other plants throughout the world, were not able to take the amount of carbon in the air and keep it at a minimum, or keep it right where it was. Now, this is kind of catastrophic as it means that temperatures will continue to rise, sharks will be further displaced, putting them closer in contact with humans, leading to more bites, leading to more stupid alerts that won't really do anything other than just freak people out. Now, the regulation rollbacks will most likely not cause prices to drop, as even when they do go into effect, a lot of CEOs like to pocket that money and then still complain that they can't do anything to raise minimum wage or anything like that. But I do want to give a quick shout out to Costco, Dick's, and Arizona Iced Tea Company, as their CEOs have kept their diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also kept prices where they are. And they've looked out for the consumer a lot. I do remember one of my favorite stories I ever read is that Costco's CEO even threatened a board member that he would kill him if they ever changed the price of the $1.50 hot dog. So that's just hardcore, and I'm with it. But anyway, a little tangent there, but Costco's great. Now, I've already written to lawmakers in Florida, as I know many have down here, but they don't really seem to care about who they represent right now or what we even really want them to do. But yours may listen a bit better, so there is still hope, and thankfully many other countries are putting forth efforts to protect the environment. But please, of course, write your local lawmakers or call them, protest, whatever you need to do to get the message through to these regulations that they need to be upheld. If we continue this trend, the effects will become irreversible and there won't be any time left to help. But right now, we still have time. Now, of course, this is not all doom and gloom. I may have gotten upset about this, and I may have said some things that upset some people, and I mean, that's just kind of the state of the world right now. But one thing to help calm you down a little bit if you're worried about it is that there's thousands, if not millions, of scientists working on reversing climate change, and everyone doing anything they can to help, such as recycling, walking or biking instead of driving, not using AI to look things up. You can simply Google, which, fun fact, AI was found to be wrong about 60% of the time and uses like 10 times the energy. So, just Google it. It's better. But all these things and any effort you make to help the environment will make a difference. So don't let that discourage you from being an eco warrior. It's going to be fine. We're going to work this out, but something's got to give. But that's what I have for this episode. Thank you for letting me go on my little tangents there and everything like that. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate y'all hanging out and being here as you always are. And you can always comment or DM your favorite shark fact because, of course, I want to throw more at the beginning there. Follow along on social media. Send in any comments, questions, anything like that. And, of course, give us a rating and send this to someone you think would like to listen to it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.